on Islam for about, mashallah, close to 25 years now. Not every talk or not every engagement one looks forward to. Sometimes certain engagements and talks are quite intense and stressing. But I do have to say, وَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدُ وَبِاللَّهِ تَوْفِيقًا مِنَ اللَّهِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى. Keep it like this, that this is a very kind of comfortable gathering, and I'm really pleased to be with the brothers, and inshallah also the sisters as well. Okay, the title of the talk, one of the things that I find in, and this is just an opinion as opposed to a fatwa, one of the things that I find about tarbiyah, about nurturing and educating ourselves upon knowledge and understanding, is that sometimes when we pick on specific topics and we try to stick specifically to the mandate of that title, we lose out on a lot of side points. And as you know, that the Quran itself doesn't come down topic by topic. Okay, there's no kind of a specific topic, and when it does deal with a topic, and when it does deal with a theme, you'll find all these side points, and you'll find stories of the stories of the prophets are related in the Quran, alayhimus salatu wassalam. There is a hadith, authentic hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, in which he said that when the names of the prophets are mentioned, then send salam and salawat upon them, sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that. So either we send it when we hear the word, the term prophet, or when we hear specific names of specific prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam. And when the stories are being told, then sometimes just in the middle of the story there's a fiqhi point, there's a point of Islamic law, or there is a point of aqeedah, and then it might return back to the story, or some other social issue may come into it. And we kind of gain from that that the majority of human beings are more responsive to spiritual and exhortational discourses which are not structured as such. And there is a minority of human beings who respond very well to structured educational academic discourses, academic talks. And that's why the Quran has a non-academic approach. Why? Because it's appealing to the whole of mankind, and the majority of mankind aren't academically minded. Their minds don't work like that. Their hearts don't work like that. And one of the things I found over the years is that actually trying to just have a general inspirational talk to a wider audience is much better, because actually many a time we actually miss out on certain important foundational understandings. And the scholars say, "Man lam yutqin al-usul, hurim al-wasul." Whoever doesn't safeguard the foundations, or whoever doesn't preserve the principles, will be barred from the goal, will be barred from the objective. And one of the things today is that even though, alhamdulillah, Allah has guided many of us to doing the deeds and the acts of Muslims, praying and fasting and giving zakat and things like that, but quite often we tend not to think like Muslims. Okay, that's a subtle point. We quite often can do the acts of Muslims, but very often we tend not to think like believers or Muslims should do. And one of the key reasons of that is we are actually divorced from the Quranic guidelines, simply because the vast majority of Muslims, I suspect, as has been stated on the tongue of numerous scholars and spiritual masters of this age, the majority of Muslims, we have been disconnected from the Quran. The Quran is not a book that we actually pick up and read on a regular basis. And even those of us who try to pick up the Quran and read it on a regular basis, it is not a book that we try to understand and contemplate on a regular basis. And sometimes we approach, and sometimes we Muslims, we can end up thinking things that actually go very much against the Quran. And one of those areas that I found out in my youth, because when I started becoming more religiously conscious. Of course, I'm a Muslim, walillahi alhamd, I'm born into a Muslim family. But like the second generation of Muslims of my, of my era, Friday prayers and a few other bits and pieces, Eid prayers you'd get to, and God forbid you had to get to the mosque on one of those holy nights, and then you'd kind of, under protest you'd go. But one of the things that happens in 1979 is that Islam as a global phenomena comes to the attention of the media, because you have the Iranian Revolution of 1979 and Ayatollah Khomeini, and you also have the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. And that I suspect is the turning point for a global awakening of definitely people of my generation, definitely living in the West, in Northern America, in Northern Europe, here in Great Britain. And one of the things I found now, looking back now, is that how passionate I was, and those with me were, for Islam. Many a demonstration we went on, okay, for one reason or the other. And how actually not very Islamic some of my thoughts and understandings were. Especially when it came to understanding socio-political matters. And let me explain why. The Quran makes no bones about why and how calamities come to a God-chosen people, to a people chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and who are recipient of His revelation, like the Jewish people, the Banu Israel, the Israelites before us, and like the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam now. We are chosen to be the recipients of a message and a book, and made to be followers of a prophet, in this case the final prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How calamities come to a people who are recipient of divine guidance, the Quran is absolutely clear. And I found then, and I still continue to find, that when we begin to discuss social issues or social political issues that may come under the rubric of siyasa shar'iyya, religious or Islamic politics, many of us don't have the fundamental understandings of what the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ teach in these matters, but we have a great deal of zeal and passion. I am in no doubt that the Ummah is full of zeal and passion and good intentions, but I am also in no doubt that many of us have a very fragile or poor understanding of why Allah Jalla wa Ala has brought us to this stage in which we are in. And what is our stage? We went from being a people who in a very short amount of time saw the blessings of Allah pour down on them, in the sense of, in terms of a religious community, and in terms of economic, civilizational, and even military success, to a people who, regrettably, we have now become, even though we are possibly 1/5 of the world's population, out of the 6 billion people on this planet, or close to 7 billion people on this planet, 1.5, 1.8 billion human beings are Muslims. Walillahi alhamd. That's a great thing, and that's a blessing from Allah. And yet this 1 in every 5 people, this nation, this global nation that we belong to, if you're like me, born here, we belong to the British nation. We're Brits in that sense, but we also have another identity, that we are part of the Ummah, the nation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're the Ummatul Ijaba. We are the people of this world who have responded to his call sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and thereby we became Muslims, walillahi alhamd. And so, for example, some people will say, well, the reason why And over the years, okay, over the decades, Muslims have tried to pinpoint, why have we got ourselves into this incredible sad state whereby we've almost become a doormat for people to wipe their feet on and just traipse into Muslim majority countries and take Muslim resources and basically humiliate Muslims by and large. How has that happened? And some people pinpointed that, look, we fell behind in science and technology, and clearly science and technology brought to the Western world great strength and great abilities. Difficult to fight someone with a rifle when you've got a spear in your hand, for example. More than military might, something that came to the Western world from, say, around about the 17th century onwards, though it actually started at least in Europe in Oliver Cromwell's time, which was economic strength through interest, through riba. Once the legislation against riba, once the Christian legislation against riba, against usury was forgotten or just brushed under the carpet, and the riba interest usually became a national phenomena or a European phenomena. Untold monies came in very quickly, and with money you can buy military power and strength, no doubt at all. And a number of people have said that's what we lack. We lack economic success, or we lack political success, or educational success. We lack civilizational success. We lack technological success. And all of these things are true in their own place and in their own important pigeonhole, no doubt at all. But the Quran, in so many places, not just in one place, but in so many places, in so many situations, tells us of a completely different reality for the reason why a religious community becomes weak and oppressed and humiliated. Let's look at this. Why? Because one of the things we know about illnesses and diseases in life is that if I don't recognize I am ill, then I won't even make the first step to cure the illness. If I think everything is rosy-dozy, okay, then I won't take the medicine. I won't take that first step. And I think we need to kind of really have not just a serious look, but a serious understanding. So let's have a shot at this. It's a talk that I normally flesh out over a long period, but let's give some highlights, inshallah. Let's look at some of the verses in the Quran and some hadith of the Prophet that speak about weakness of why believers can or do become weak. So, for example, the Quran would say, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitan." Well, no, actually, let's start with an event. In the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, when he was caliph, and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was governor of Syria, there was an expedition, a naval expedition, sent to Cyprus. The Muslim caliphate sent about 500 ships, 12,000 men, to this tiny island, okay, in the Mediterranean, Cyprus. And what Cyprus had done is it had broken the treaty, its treaty with the Muslim government, apparently by siding with the enemy, the Byzantine enemy. And so the government thought, the Muslim caliphate thought, let's just teach it a lesson so that we send a signal out to the general area. And they launched this attack. And it wasn't really not much of an attack because, 500 ships almost covers the entirety of the island. Okay, if you see it on a map, it's a very beautiful shape, but, it's very small. Okay, and they were already in their twilight days. They used to be a great power, okay, part of a great power base. But by the time the Muslims came on the scene, they had kind of gone past their sell-by date. And so we learn this narration, which is in Kitab al-Zuhud of Imam Ahmed. There's this hadith, or this narration rather. Jubayr ibn Nufayr said, once when Cyprus was conquered and its people were divided and they were crying on each other, I saw Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu sitting alone weeping. Who is Abu Darda? He is a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the senior companions of the Prophet ﷺ, known particularly for his immense piety and God-fearingness. And he's part of this naval expedition, the army, he's part of the army. So I saw, Jubair says, I saw. We got victory. The enemy are kind of, the defeated people are crying over each other. And we're all rejoicing at the victory that Allah has given us. And Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, this Sahabi, he's weeping. So Jubair says, I said, "Oh Abu Darda, what makes you weep on this day that Allah has given victory to Islam and its people?" So this is what Abu Darda says. Okay, look at this political understanding of this individual soul who is not just passionate about Islam. He's not ruled by his passions, but his whole life has been molded to fit the teachings of the Quran, of Revelation, and of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He comes out of the madrasa, the college of the Prophet ﷺ, and look at his understanding. He says, وَيْهَقَ يَا جُبَيْرِ, woe be to you, O Jubair. ما أحون الخلق على الله إذا أضاء أمره بين هي قاهرة وظاهرة لهم الملك تركوا أمر الله فصاروا إلى ما ترى. Woe be to you, O Jubair. How insignificant the people become to God, people become in Allah's eyes when they begin to disobey His command. In front of us is a nation that was evidently powerful and strong and had dominion. But then they abandoned the command of God. So see what became of them. Abu Darda is telling us, actually, we only have that victory over them because they disobeyed Allah. They sidetracked His revelation and the teachings of the prophets. You know, they were Catholic Christians, or they were Christians at that time predominantly. And we are adhering to Allah's revelation. That's the only reason. And if we go back a little while to one caliph before Uthman radiallahu anhu, who's the caliph before Uthman radiallahu anhu? Umar radiallahu anhu. Who conquered Egypt? Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas?
Yes. No.
Amr ibn al-As. When Amr ibn al-As conquered Egypt, there was a time when the Muslim armies went into Egypt and they couldn't get past a certain way. There was a stalemate. And so at one particular time, the leader of the army, he writes to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, writes to Umar radiallahu anhu saying, look, we're actually, for weeks on end now, there's a standoff between us, the Muslim army, and the Egyptians. We can't get past them. So what do you advise? So Umar radiallahu anhu writes this famous letter. The first half of the letter is really, it's the essence. It gives you the key to victory. The second half is war tactics. Deploy 1,000 men there, 2,000 men there, do that, and that's the game of chess for you. But let's read the first half. Amma ba'd. So he says, I command you, and the armies with you, بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ عَلَى كُلِّ حَالٍ, to have fear of God, piety in God, taqwa of God in every circumstance. فَإِنَّ تَقْوَى اللَّهِ عَمْدًا وَأَقْوَى الْعُدَّةِ عَلَى الْعُدُوِّ وَأَقْوَى الْمَقِيدَ فِي الْحَرْبِ. Because the taqwa of God, piety or taqwa of Allah, is the best preparation against the enemy and the strongest stratagem in war. And I order you and those with you to be more careful in guarding against sin than you are careful with regards to the enemy. For indeed, sins are to be feared more to the army than their actual enemy. For the Muslims are only given victory due to their enemy's disobedience. Otherwise, we would have no superiority over them, for our numbers are not like their numbers, and our material preparation is not like their material preparation. So if we are both equal in respect to sin and disobedience, then they have superiority over us due to their preparation and their numerical strength. And if we don't gain victory over them due to our excellence, we won't gain victory over them due to our strength. And then the next half of the letter is, so what you can also do after that is deploy the army here, 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 here. And Sa'ad does that basically. Sa'ad does that, and subhanAllah, the rest is history, because mashallah, then we have Sheikh Mahmoud come here, 1400 years later, alhamdulillah, and we have Azhar, and we have all of these great ulama who have come from that real blessed land. And for the middle centuries of Islam, even if it didn't have the actual caliphate there, but Egypt and its people were really the bastion, the bulwark of the Muslim army for such a long time. Okay, which is why when in 1797, Napoleon, taqriban, 1798, when Napoleon marches into Egypt, with not much of an army, that was kind of the beginning of the end for that part of the history, and we can kind of we're still in that kind of in that state, I suspect. Hopefully the masjid won't get into too much trouble for this talk. You can always say it was SheikhAaliya. Okay, so what do these two things say? All these two things do is actually reflect a Quranic principle. The Quran will say, let's take another war issue. The Quran will say about the Battle of Uhud, Surah Al-Imran. Okay, the story is long and I'll cut it out. If there's time in question and answers, I'll mention the occasion of the battle. But at the beginning of the Battle of Uhud, Muslims were winning. At the end, the Muslims had a serious setback. And so the Muslims asked, well, hold on, where did this calamity come to us? At the beginning of the battle, we were winning, and then at the end, we've kind of lost 70 people. We have 70 casualties. And the Quran immortalizes that event in the Quran, because we read it now as Quran in Surah Al-Imran. The Quran will say, when they started asking, how did this calamity come to us? When we suffered a calamity of 70 odd people and they suffered a calamity twice as great, then you ask, where did this calamity come? Now Allah could have said, and the Muslims know how it came. It came because a person who was then not a Muslim, who later on became a Muslim, a master war tactician, Khalid ibn al-Walid, just did this excellent strategy of war and turned the tide of the battle. But what does the Quran say? It doesn't even mention that. It lays the failure and the defeat of that battle where قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ, say it is from your own selves. Hey? Why is Allah blaming the Muslims? They're the ones who made the jihad. They're the ones who did the sacrifice. They're the ones who died. They're the ones who got hurt. They're the ones who are fighting for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ, say it is from yourselves. Well, what did they do? Actually, out of 3,000 or 4,000 people, less than 50 people disobeyed one command of the Prophet ﷺ. Not many commands of the Prophet ﷺ, not continuous disobedience, momentary disobedience, which actually wasn't a disobedience like, well, yeah, let me just disobey. It was a kind of mistaken disobedience. But because of the calamity of less than 30 people in an army of 3,000 plus, the whole of the army experienced the withdrawal of Allah's barakah, in which they suffered a setback. قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. And the army as a whole, it was said to them, say it is because of your own selves. Meaning a disobedience that happened amongst you, within you, which actually coloured all of you. The Quran will say elsewhere, مَا أَصَابَكُم مِّنْ حَسَنَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن سَيِّئَةٍ فَمِن نَفْسِكَ. Whatever good comes to you, it's from God, from Allah. Whatever calamity befalls you or strikes you, it is from your own self, subhanallah. Elsewhere the Quran will say, in a similar vein, on that similar theme, مَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. And whatever calamity befalls you, it is for what your own hands have earned, but Allah pardons a lot. Another verse will say, ظَهَرَ الْفَسَادُ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِي النَّاسِ. Corruption has appeared upon land and in the sea because of what the hands of men have earned. It's always coming back to sins that human beings do. It's always coming back to sins that human beings... Sins. Let's give a simile. Imagine we're in one of those rare times of British summer. We go out, we step outside the masjid. The sky is blue, no cloud in sight. The sun is beaming down. How do we feel? We feel warm. We feel good. There's light, there's warmth. But what will happen? What happens? Let's just say clouds start forming. And let's say they're thick clouds. And let's say there's lots of clouds. And they cover the sun. Then we start feeling cold. And a level of light has gone. Let us imagine then. Let us imagine that sins are like clouds. And every time we sin, as individuals, small sin, big sin, major sin, minor sin, group sin, individual sin, anytime we sin against God, we create a cloud, as it were, above us. The more we sin, the more these clouds form, and the thicker they form. There'll come a time when people are sinning, let's just say, in a community of 1,000 Muslims, 20 people or 100 people or 200 people are praying 5 times a day. The rest of them are praying 4 times a day, 3 times a day, once a week, twice every year, whatever. So there is a lot of sin. Let's say foul language, backbiting, major sin, slandering, major sin, telling lies, major sin. All of these things in between. Disobedience of children to parents, major sins. Many other things in between that. Lustful gaze, major sin. Dealing with interest, riba, major sin. Cheating, major sin. All these things going on. Clouds form. Sooner or later, you can imagine, clouds have formed such a thick blanket in the sky that it blots out the sun's light. Now, unlike normal clouds, the clouds of sins just stay there and stay there and stay there. They don't kind of dissipate as such. When the sun is blotted out, let's just say for a long, long period of time, days, weeks, months, the people on the ground begin to feel not just cold, it's likened, winter setting in. No warmth. When there is no warmth, things can't grow properly. In fact, life dies in the bitter cold when the sun, the light of the sun and the warmth of the sun is blotted out. That is the case with us today. Sins have formed clouds and veils between us and the light and the blessings of Allah, which give light and warmth. And we are in a spiritual winter. We're not just in a physical winter in British February. We are actually in a spiritual winter, and we were like that last July, and we might even be like this next July. Let's force the issue a bit more. The Prophet ﷺ says, as an example, long hadith, but at the tail end of this hadith, it says, وَجُعِلَ الذُّلُّ وَالصَّغَارُ عَلَى مَنْ خَالَفَ أَمْرِي. The Prophet said, humiliation and ignominy is for he who opposes my command. And then the hadith says, وَمَنْ تَشَبَّهَ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. And whoever resembles the people is from them. Another hadith says about sins, that when a person sins, his rizq, his sustenance is, or some of his sustenance is withdrawn from him. Another authentic hadith says, no two people love each other for the sake of Islam, for the sake of Allah, or in another narration, for the sake of Islam. And separation comes between them except because of a sin one of them committed. SubhanAllah, it takes years to build up brotherhood, and it can be broken in a single moment because of a sin someone does, and then the blessing of Allah is just withdrawn. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, and after this hadith, let me get into some explanation. O Muhajirun, on one particular hadith in Ibn Majah, he says, O Muhajirun, you may be afflicted with 5 things, and God forbid that you should live to see them. And then he mentions the 5. If fahisha can mean any kind of, a fahisha can refer to kind of iniquitous deeds, but really fahisha is very much linked with zina, with adultery and fornication, and kind of bad interaction with the opposite sex. Okay, but that's not the only fahisha, but quite often fahisha is linked with that. So if fahisha should become widespread, you should realize that this has never happened before without new diseases befalling the people which their forefathers never suffered. If people should begin cheating in weighing out goods and giving and cheating in giving just measure, you should know that this has never happened before without drought and famine befalling the people and their rulers oppressing them. If people should withhold giving zakat, this has never happened before without the rain being stopped from falling, and were it not for the sake of the animals, Allah wouldn't allow it to rain again. If people should break their covenant, their promise with Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you should realize that this has never happened before without Allah sending an enemy against them to take some of their resources and possessions by force. And if the leaders do not govern by the book of Allah and select the best from it, then you should know that this has never happened before without Allah making them into groups and making them suffer at the hands of each other. Subhanallah. Sexual iniquity, new diseases befalling people. Not giving zakat, wouldn't rain again, except that there are animals. Cheating in weighing up measures, not in our mu'amalat, in our just social transactions. We're always cheating and not giving out full measures. And it doesn't necessarily mean you go down Walthamstow Market and you buy a pound of apples and you weigh it with 3/4 of a pound. Any type of cheating in financial matters comes under this. What is the result of that? Allah allowing an enemy to come into our lands to humiliate the Muslim majority lands. That's sins. Zakat didn't mention salat, which is even worse. You can imagine what would happen if if that's the case for zakat, then what about salat? And then there's hajj and fasting and subhanallah. All of this tells us that actually any calamity that we are suffering, though there are worldly causes and political causes and people and individuals and organizations that we can point to, the underlying reality that Allah wants us to see is that we have disconnected from God. We have, as a whole, even if there are awliya amongst us, pious and righteous people amongst us, on the whole, we have disconnected from God. And if there is a family, if there's a family and it has 10 children, let's say, mum and dad and 10 children, and 2 of those children are incredibly righteous, pious, intelligent, but 8 of those children aren't, normally we would say that, let's say 8 of those children are utterly wicked. Utterly wicked. We would say that is a wicked family. Because 80% of them are bad. Even if it has 20% good, we will say it's so much more bad than it is good that we just generally say it's a bad family. So if there are people here that we're trying to fulfill Allah's commands, we're praying and fasting and do whatever, but the majority of us aren't, then that's how the ummah will be seen by Allah Jalla wa'ala. Individually we may be rescued by Allah's mercy, because individually, we are going to be judged individually. But just as a Muslim collective on this planet, then we'll get the fruits of collective disobedience, which is not good. So here, can you then see the folly of me telling you about the fault of every ruler? Here I am in a Jummah khutbah. And let's not cut any bones about it. Many Muslims who come to a Jummah khutbah only come to that prayer in a week. Some of them come to all prayers in a week, but many don't. And from those people who come to every prayer in the week, many of us have other sins that we haven't taken care of in our lives. Major sins, for which we haven't even made tawbah for. And here I am, I'm expected now to tell you of the fault of this ruler. He's oppressing, he's a zalim, he's a fajir, he's a fasik, kada wa kada wa kada. And he may be all of that and more. And we've had our fair share of them. And we still have our fair share now. Sometimes by the grace and the majesty of the British government, imperialist power. What's the point in me telling you all of that? Because does that make you in the audience, I'm talking about the Friday audience, pray 5 times a day? They say, oh well, Amir such and such, ruler such and such, president such of such and such a Muslim majority country. He's a fasik, he's a this, he's a that. Oh God, I'm going to go home and I'm going to pray 5 times a day. It doesn't do that at all. What it does, it makes me secure that, Now that's not to say that we shouldn't have some political astuteness. All I'm saying is that actually, does that match up to any of the teachings of the Quran, the Sunnah, the Sahaba? Is that what the Quran tells us? That when there is a calamity, actually blame everyone else. قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِي أَنفُسِكُمْ. Say it's from yourselves. So, just with this qaida, this principle in mind, that the underlying cause of humiliation for a believing community, even if it has worldly socio-political causes that we can point to, the underlying reality is that there is a disconnect between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala collectively. And the solution then isn't to make everyone politically savvy and become almost like Sky News or BBC News Service telling you the state of affairs at every second. The greater emphasis, and I'm not denying political awareness, the greater emphasis must be upon trying to remove those clouds that block out the divine help and the light and the barakah. And that is through getting us to do the right basic obligatory deeds. And that's why my final hadith, and there are many more, إِذَا تَبَايَعْتُمْ بِالْعِينَ, the Prophet ﷺ said, وَأَخَذْتُمْ أَذْنَابَ الْبَقَرِ وَرَدِيتُمْ بِالزَّرْعِ وَتَرَكْتُمُ الْجِهَادِ سَلَّطَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ ذُلًّا لَا يَنْزِعُهُ عَنْكُمْ حَتَّى تَرْجِعُوا إِلَى دِينِكُمْ أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. When you deal in عِينَ and hold on to the tails of the cows and are satisfied with agriculture and abandon striving in God's path, Allah will permit your humiliation, and He will not lift this humiliation from you until you return to your religion. It doesn't mean that we have left our religion and we have, God forbid, na'udhu billah min dhalik, become murtadun, apostates. It means until you return to practicing your religion. Just like Allah says in the Quran elsewhere, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in tansurullaha yansurkum. O you who believe, if you help Allah, Allah will help you. Meaning, if you help Allah, because Allah doesn't need any help obviously. If you help Allah by obeying His commands, that's the tafsir, that's the explanation given by our Salaf. Allah will help you against your enemies. وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ, the Quran says, and He will establish your feet firmly. If you help Allah by helping His religion, by acting upon what is right, He will help you and establish your feet firmly. If you hold fast to the tail, if you deal in Ina is very, very quickly, it's a particular type of transaction which is a kind of a trick around the Sharia so that you can gain some riba, some interest. Okay, and it's a particular form, but I'll miss out the form at the moment. When you hold on to the tails of the cow and content yourself with agriculture, most of the commentators on this hadith in Abu Dawud says, when you become overly worldly, too worldly. Dunya is more important to you than the akhirah. Akhirah is important. I go to Jummah prayer, I go to Eid prayer. I don't eat pork at home, but khalas, if I got time for God the other times of the week, I'll try to factor Him into my busy life. If I've got time to pray, then alhamdulillah, I'll try to pray. But if I haven't got time to pray, then khalas,
Long you make a birthday, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you are right. You go straight into Jannah.
There you have it. when you deal in Ina and hold on to the tails of the cows and content yourself with agriculture, and you abandon striving in Allah's way. We're striving, okay? We're striving. I just remember I just remember one of my let me generalize it. I knew of a Muslim who we were trying to get him to pray. Just pray, all right, just come for dhuhr, because he was really working right next to a mosque. So come for dhuhr. We couldn't even get that. Maybe it was a failure on our behalf as well. Okay. And I remember when the sales used to happen, like the Harrod sales, and they used to have this queue out there. I don't know if they still do that. And you would queue up for about 3 days before the New Year's Harrod sale, because some item of clothing or some television, which was like, £100,000, you get it for £10.50 if you're the first in the door. And one day I'm watching this, like the ITV news, and I'm sitting there with some of my friends or whatever, and I'm thinking, is that, let's call him Abdullah, okay? Is that Abdullah? And it's like, whoa, this is Abdullah. He's there with his coffee and he's irate, and he's there for 2-3 days. He actually didn't get the £10.50, whatever. He got something good. But there and then, as soon as I saw it, I said to my friend, you know what? No problem. This is good for us. Because they were saying, oh, look at him. He can go there, but he can't even get to the masjid. I said, no problem. He's just dug his grave. But he's dug his paradise as well. He's dug his grave and his Jannah. Because when he comes back, that's all we're going to say to him. Oh, you can get to so do you love Harrods more than... And we just kept on at him. We just nagged him. And in the end, mashallah, Dhuhr. And then Dhuhr and Maghrib. And then, mashallah, Allah just guided him to fill in the gaps to which, inshallah ta'ala, he's not in this country anymore. Inshallah, he's from the Musalliyun who pray regularly. Walillahi alhamd. But the point being is, we can strive. We've got an incredible amount of talent in the Muslim communities up and down the country, within the West. The minimum talent we have is Allah has graced us to be able to square our religious practice at some level with Western liberal democracy. The greater talent is that we have people who are just professionally, academically minded, high up there. And if we don't have that, we have intelligence such enough that we can scan the DHS system, but that's not something I want you to do. You want to know a gap in the insurance claim? Ask the Muslim bros, because we've worked it out. Really, they should be coming to us to tell them how to plug their loopholes. I also know some of that because my dad, for about 40 years, used to be in the DHS. But of course, he couldn't relate specific cases because that's against the Disclosure Act. And obviously, when you're brought up in a Muslim community, you know that it happens a lot. Point being is, Allah, look at the end of this hadith. So get to a serious point. Sallallahu alaykum dhullah. Our Messenger of Mercy, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, said, Allah will permit your humiliation. And He won't lift it from you until you return to your religious practice. And it doesn't matter how many demonstrations we go on. And that's not to undermine that type of political activity. But no matter how much demonstrations we go on, no matter how much noise we make, no matter how much blame pointing we do, until we return back to religiousness. Religious not just in terms of, I'm a Muslim, but actually doing the deeds of Islam. And no matter how much, even if we were to beg to the non-Muslim oppressors, and not all non-Muslims are oppressors, but even if we were to beg to the non-Muslim oppressors and say, yeah, I'm going to lick the lolly and I'm going to bite the stick. If Allah doesn't want our oppression to be removed, it's not going to happen. Allah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, is the doer, is the mover, is the power. And there needs to be a connect to Him. Now, some weak in faith and weak in intellect consider that to be quietism, apolitical. Oh, you're just saying that we should just continue in our oppression. Absolutely not. Walillahi alhamd, even before Allah inspired me guided me to religious practice, even before then, I had a social conscience. It helped because I was brought up with true Rastas and Rastafarians who had this kind of thing about oppression. Some of them just loved to have the locks and the look. And so I was always aware of kind of racism and this, that, and that. So even in my even in my college days and whatever, I would try not to bank with Barclays because Barclays was supporting South Africa. I didn't know anything much about Deen apart from praying or whatever. So it's not because I'm not, I have no, I don't have a social conscience. It's because actually Allah has made it so clear. And these are just a few of the verses. You can go throughout the whole Quran and you wouldn't find a single place where Allah actually blames the enemy more than he blames the Muslim for disobedience. Because the believer should know better. So I put it to you. A proper social-political examination of our community or our national communities in this country or our global Muslim communities, we must take into account basic prayers, basic fasting, basic fara'id, wajibat, fardul ayn issues, basic obligations, personal obligation issues. If we think we can skip that process, then we will have another 80, 90, 100 years of what we have in the world. And I don't know if the world can take any more of what it's already taking, because we hardly give our children a decent world to inherit, except that it's ecologically turned upside down, except that the weather patterns and global warming are kind of going into some type of rack and ruin, except that we've enforced upon them global debts. And don't blame kuffar and don't blame the Royal Bank of Scotland boss. We are just as greedy. We are just as greedy. Okay, let's not divorce ourselves from this thing, because it's us as well. So, wallah alam, all I know is there is hope. And the reason why there is hope, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. It is Allah who has sent His messenger with guidance and the religion of truth, that He may make it supreme over all other religions, even though the idolaters detest it. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith that this affair, and this religion, will enter every place. Every place. Either given to it, coming in with honor because the people accept Islam, or with humiliation because they oppose the final religion of God. I am not saying we should be vengeful. We should have a compassionate heart. I am not saying that we should spread violence. I am not saying that part of Islam is to attack civilians or civilian targets. All I'm saying is that there are injustices in this world that make us bleed. But it's not enough to just bleed. We have to do the act of a bleeding man, which is the act of obedience. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
Brother, we have 10 minutes, no more 10 minutes inshallah for questions. So please start, brother, within the topic, please. Any question outside the topic? I'm sorry, we have 2 minutes. So I'll give the time for another brother who has within the question, within the topic. Please, brother.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for Brother Ibrahim give us this platform to be.
No, please. You killed me.
So my question is action, because the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam always in the Masjid Nabi to the action. I have experience. I sit in the Trafalgar Square, holding the seed in my hand, and the 100 pigeons around me, and look at that. Where is the 18 years, 16 years, 19 years our children? Where are they now? What we are doing. I have a survey report, I can give it to you, hand it over to you. I've been to library and internet cafes. All our children, they're sitting in the libraries or in the internet cafe. They're doing the homework there. So we have the seed, so why not we give the seed to the internet, they provide to the computer in the mosque, and these children, where they're sitting in the cafe and libraries, our daughters and the son, so they use these centers. So this is my advice to you. Please.
Alhamdulillah. That's good. So, Barakallahu Fikum, just a practical suggestion, which is not really, which is, I suppose, part of the majlis. What can we not do, meaning the masjid here, more to attract the youths? And since they're already online and they're a cyber generation, why not set up something in the masajid, in the mosques, computers whereby they can use the same things here, so that they're not in those places, they're in the masjid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. I know there are brothers here who are working on and have that fikr and concern about how we get in the Muslim youths. My first time here, I actually met one of the brothers, so I'm sure there are more than one brother. So it's something that you can liaise with them, inshallah ta'ala, but absolutely, inshallah, and dua. And dua. And also don't give up hope, because my experience is many people. I know people, just as a factor of hope, because it was a very strong talk that, you know, that kind of more of a, not slap to us, but it kind of was a push on us. But I don't want us to lose hope. In my experience, I know people who, at least I know one person used to be a hitman. God forbid he does have a record as well, but he is now, walillahil hamd, for many decades. He came into Islam. Well, he was born a Muslim, but he came back into Islam. I know people who did some of the foulest things when I was growing up, okay? One day when I came into actually Redbridge Mosque one time, and I came in, it was just before, a day or two before Ramadan, and I came in the masjid, and then my friend said to me, look at the front row, and I saw this person. I thought, oh no. I recognized him from about 15, 20 years ago, and the last time we saw, you know, there was guns flying everywhere and whatever. I thought, this guy is not going to start something in the masjid. And so my friend, who's local to Redbridge, he kind of like circled around him to just make sure that, because this guy had a reputation. And then I just observed him, and truth be told, really, even in my prayer, I was thinking, you know, this guy, I just know him. And I saw him at the end of the prayer, he got up, and he got up in such a quick way. I thought, oh, this is it, going to kick off. And he went to that safe where the money box in Redbridge Mosque, and he put money in there. I thought, okay, so money there, maybe he's just asking Allah for forgiveness for what he's going to do next. And then he came up to his point, coming to me, but he actually went to my friend. He was coming my direction, and that just all that look, you know. And he came up, he goes, he said, brother, I did such and such in the prayer. Does that break my wudu for the prayer? And do I have to repeat my prayer again? So my friend is like, you know, because he wasn't expecting that, and I wasn't. And then he turned to me and goes, oh, well, yeah. I said, and it was such a simple question. Normally I could have just said yes or no. It was a no. It was a no answer. But I had to think twice, because I was thinking, that's not what I expect from him. And what's happened is he's just reformed his life. So, walillahil hamd, you know, Allah has a way with many, and alhamdulillah, many of those children. Until the sad thing about many of the Muslim youths is they don't come into religion because of us. Okay, that's the sad thing. But alhamdulillah, many of them do, alhamdulillah. But we can work harder, and Allah knows best. Any other questions?
Yeah?
How do we differentiate from trials that may face us because of our belief, our extent of our belief? Most people that get tested are the ones that are the most highest demand. How do we differentiate from that and being punished for calamities falling upon us because of our disobedience?
Jade, how do we differentiate between trials that come upon us as a test of our faith and obedience, and how do we differentiate between that and between calamities that come upon us because of our sin and disobedience? And the Quran is very clear about praiseworthy trials and punishing sins. One of the ways is clearly upon the issue of sin and obedience. If something comes to me by way of, I have been obedient, and a calamity and some trial comes, inshallah I can have husnul dhan, okay, good opinion that inshallah this is a trial of my faith. That's one thing we could do. However, it's not unknown that just because I was obedient in this sphere of my life, it doesn't mean that I'm not, that I was obedient in another sphere. I'll give an example. In the Tafsir ibn Kathir, one of the Sahaba, one of the Salaf said that I know when I have sinned and I have not been conscious of it because of the behavior of my wife towards me, or because of the behavior of my riding beast, meaning the horse is jittery and not stable. Okay? Therefore, just as a spiritual advice to myself and others, it's always worth starting with what is possibly likely to be the reality, that I have sinned somewhere and I haven't made tawbah for. I think it takes a very pious person or a very deluded person to think that, hold on, these are all trials. I mean, if we're on the Imam Malik level, the Imam Ahmed level, and the level of the great Salaf and people dotted around history like that, then Bismillah, absolutely, they are trials for obedience. And the fuqara like well, like the one who speaks now, you know, the faqih, like the one who speaks now, really, it's just, we should not be deluded about our nafs. And we can just make an assessment about how much we sin and how much we don't sin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay, just small, even things which we consider small. You know, we're not allowed to look at a man's aura, as like we can't look at a woman's aura. Okay, but, you know, football players don't cover their aura. You know, we may play football with, you know, with tracksuit bottoms and whatever, but that's not how the game is played on TV. So I'm just saying that, you know, now, you know, that's not an attack on football or anything. All I'm saying is, in a liberal society, it's very hard to protect yourself against sin, and one of the things we need to be clear about, I'm so in need of Allah, because this is just not going to happen without Allah. Okay? And if I can get to that position of faqr, of spiritual poverty, that really I'm nothing without Allah, you know, then subhanAllah, things, you know, the sky can open. The skies can open. Allah. I'd just like to mention three pieces of Arabic poetry which actually sum up this whole thing, okay? And they have backgrounds, okay, but very quickly. Knowing how to be a shepherd for the ummah, okay? The Arabs say, أوردها سعد وسعد مشتمل ما هكذا يا سعد تورد الإبل. Sa'ad came in. Sa'ad arrived leading the camels. Oh, Sa'ad, that's not the way you bring in camels. I mean, forget, leave camels now. Let's think of sheep. Just imagine a shepherd. He comes in and he's got his flock of sheep. He comes in first and the sheep are behind him. That's not how you shepherd. You're behind the flock of sheep, maybe with your sheepdog, and you kind of herd them in. Otherwise, sheep go everywhere. Okay? So that's not the way you shepherd camels. Likewise, oh, us Muslims, we can't be talking about just political things and blaming everyone, and the kuffar done this, and the UN do this, and Britain done this, and America doing this, and they're doing this and probably doing more. All right? And not attend to the reality of things, which is a disconnect from God. Sa'ad came in leading the camels. Oh, Sa'ad, that's not the way you bring the camels. Know how to shepherd your own soul and shepherd people, inshaAllah ta'ala. What to feed them and when, bi'idhnillah. Secondly, this is a famous statement, possibly of the second murshid of the Ikhwan, but it became very famous upon one of the hadith scholars of our time, Sheikh Al-Albani. But it's possibly Hassan al-Khudaybiyah who originally said it, rahimahumullah. أقيموا دولة الإسلام في قلوبكم تقم لكم في أرضكم.
This is the founder.
Is it Sheikh Hassan al-Banna?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a statement of Hassan al-Banna, rahmatullah alayh. أقيموا دولة الإسلام في قلوبكم تقم لكم في أرضكم. Establish the Islamic state in your heart, and then it will be established on the earth. Okay, no good having great sentiments for Islam, but we don't do the deeds of Islam, because that's not going to work. And the last one is that the Arabs say, ترجو النجاة ولم تسلك مسالكها إن السفينة لا تجري على اليبس. You hope for salvation, but do not tread its paths. A ship never sails on dry land. We all want the best for the ummah. There is hardly a Muslim who's going to stand up and say, no, I don't care about the ummah. At some level, we all have a care and concern. We're all bleeding at some level. You hope for salvation, but don't tread its paths. A ship never sails on dry land. That's the reality. We're hoping for good and Allah's help, but we don't do the acts that draw Allah's help. So how are we going to get the required goal? In tansurullah yansurkum. If you help Allah by acting upon His command, He will help you. Now.
Jazakumullah khairan. We're going to stop here, inshallah, because we have gone past 1 hour of talks and answers, inshallah. If you have any more questions, you can come to Brother Abu Aliya after the session immediately. Jazakumullah khairan, and hopefully see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Just to let you know, I've thought of next week's talk, because I want to have a gap after that. I let Dr. Salim and Brother Shah Nawaz do a talk. So next week's talk would be deepening our tawheed.